If you have to go around and remind your people that you're their boss, you're not a leader.
Honestly, at that point, you're probably better off like closing the doors and starting fresh because you've already lost.
Because we don't walk around with name tags on that say partner. Our people follow us because they're confident in us because we're confident in them.
Right.
It's a two-way street.
Right.
And if the only way that you can get your people to do something is remind them that you have a higher title than them or remind them that you're the one that's signing their paychecks, then you're not a leader. You're a manager, and your business will go nowhere, because if your people don't organically believe in your vision, the mission, in the culture, and what you're trying to do, then you're stuck. You're not going to go anywhere.
All right, we're back. This is our second episode. We got Nick Subich here and Nick Frazetta with Discipline to Win. And today we're going to talk about something that is, I think, very important for anyone to truly be able to scale. They have to understand and appreciate the things we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to go over the power of ego-free entrepreneurship, and really, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to be an intrapreneur? And what does either having an ego or being ego-free, how does that impact both the organization and the people around you, and limit or maximize your ability to scale, really? So I guess before we jump into ego-free entrepreneurship, I think it's good for us to just talk about, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What does it mean to be an intrapreneur? Nick, you are a little newer than I am to being an entrepreneur, so I would like to hear, I guess, how you would summarize it, or what it means to you, how you would define that before I jump in and really define that myself.
Yeah, well, I think it works well because I started as an entrepreneur.
That's
how
true.
I got into the business.
That's true.
Was with you.
So you've seen it both ways.
I've seen it both ways, and everyone's like, you got to be an entrepreneur to be successful. You got to be an entrepreneur to be successful. A lot of times, being the entrepreneur first leads you to the path of entrepreneurship, which is what it did for me. So,
and it was the same with me.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit of just background on that is when we got connected, I know we talked about this in the first episode, but when we got connected, it was really all about, okay, is this an opportunity where I can grow? Is this an opportunity where is there a good culture, good people, all on a driven path? After identifying that, I knew, okay, if I get in here, there could be a chance at one point where maybe I can become an owner of this business or some type of partner capacity and go to that entrepreneur side and continue to drive the business forward. And really what I saw with you at the time was exactly that. So being able to come in, put the head down, work extremely hard, learn everything about the business, that was super important for me in making the transition from intrapreneur to entrepreneur.
And let me jump in real quick. So just to summarize that for everybody listening, so sometimes it is a much easier path to get started to
100%.
Like start working for an organization and try to add as much value as possible to improve that company, even when you're not an owner. That's the same exact path that I ultimately took, which got me started. And I saw the exact same thing that Nick did. So what I tell every single one of our new employees at our organizations is every thought you have should be, how do I add as much value as possible to this organization, and how do I pay for myself extremely fast, and then go from taking yourself off the balance sheet as a liability to an asset. And you can do that in a bunch of different ways. But yeah, that's exactly what Nick did. Exactly what I did. And some people think that it's not cool maybe to be an entrepreneur, but that is a path that is much easier than starting everything completely from scratch. Well, it fast forwards you probably 15
it really
years.
Does, because everyone feels like, oh, I got to do this by myself.
Yep.
I got to start everything from scratch. I got to build it from the ground up. When, in a sense, especially in our industry, we talked about this the other day, the barrier to entry is extremely hard, and it is a very long process if you start this completely on your own. I mean, we see guys who tried to do it on their own. They've been doing it for 20 years, and they haven't even scratched the surface. They don't even really have a business yet. And doing what we've just been trying to do, because it's so relationship-based, it takes a lot of time if you don't come into a business, be an entrepreneur, and then migrate into the entrepreneur role. So,
and we've met other people that are doing the same thing. We've met people that tried being an entrepreneur and then shifted to sort of being an entrepreneur, and where they failed as an entrepreneur, they, excelled as an entrepreneur.
100%. Sometimes you just need, like, especially for me, like I didn't know anything. I needed the structure.
Yep.
I knew this was the industry I wanted to go into. I was hardworking. I had all the right traits, but I didn't know where to start.
Right.
I didn't know, like, when you're 22 years old, you can't come out and do what we do. It's all trust.
You don't know what you don't know.
You don't know anything.
Right.
It's all experience based. Like, there's got to be some groundwork. And I think, I don't want to speak for other industries, but I would say that probably correlates with a lot of other businesses too, is you got to have a little bit of structure, or else you're just like any other person who's going out with nothing, with just an LLC trying to get business.
And I think as an entrepreneur, it's important to have a plan, because I would wager, I don't know what was going through your head, but I would wager like, okay, I'll just ask you right now, how long to when you started working at YTS did it take for you to say, like, I think I could become an equity owner here and I need to do everything it takes to do that? And then I'm sure you probably laid out some plan in your head to make that happen.
So I can tell you exactly when that happened, because it was I want to say it was my 60 or 90 day review. That's a big thing we do here too, is 30, 60, 90 day reviews for all of our people. And I think it was at my 60 day review, and we were at a restaurant, and you had mentioned, like, hey, basically I need somebody else that's on the same wavelength as me if we really want to blow this up, if we really want to grow. So then when I heard that, and I was about 2 to 3 months in, so I'm starting to learn how things work, and I'm like, okay, if I do this, and this at an extremely high level and continue to add value every single day consistently and show up and do literally whatever it takes, I know I can get into a seat where I can be on the entrepreneur side, be a part owner of the firm. So that's where it was for me, was you kind of shed a little bit of light, like, hey, this is what it takes. Like, right now you're just an employee, you're doing a good job, but if you want to go to the next level, if you really want to be a part of this firm blowing up and you want to be by my side, this is what you have to do. And then, I mean, for me, I was super fortunate. It was set out for me. I knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
A lot of people it takes years and years to figure that out. And I was really lucky in the sense that I had
it was right timing, because
exactly.
I knew that, like, that's what I was missing at that point. Like, I needed someone else to basically do exactly what I'm doing, same output and everything like that. And so for me, it was just as much an opportunity for me as it was for you. Like, it's not like anyone like lost here. It was like win-win 100%, to where, like, we both like needed the two opportunities that existed there.
Yeah.
Me to have somebody else on the same wavelength, same output, you to have the opportunity of someone that needed someone, and you were willing to fill that void and do whatever it took, basically.
Definitely.
So it was within 2 months. You basically set out in your mind, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this happen. And I feel like for both the employee side and the entrepreneur side here, this is a perfect example of communicate. Like, if like we weren't having that conversation, I wouldn't have known that you were interested. You wouldn't have known that I was interested. We may have just continued status quo for indefinitely, really. So I think it's important as an entrepreneur to communicate with your people, figure out where their mind's at, what they want, what they want to be, and then shed some light on what you think they could be, and who knows what could happen there. But yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting you there, but I thought it was interesting just to sort of, I've never even asked you when you really sort of made the decision in your mind that you wanted to do that, basically.
Well, no, I want to ask you a similar question to that, because for those of the listeners that don't know, Nick came into, essentially it was a family run practice is how I would describe it. It was not a business that you took over. You took over a practice. So how did you go from employee coming into, we always called it the old boys club.
Yeah, but I'll shed some light on what that
the old
looked
boys
like.
club. But how did you go from 24-year-old employee to owner of Old Boys Club to making it an actual business, an actual enterprise, an actual corporation?
Yeah, so I was actually, that would have been 2018.
Yeah.
I turned 29 here in November, so I would have been, 20. I would have been 23 when I came in. I turned 24 that year. So I was 23 when I came in, and it was to sort of paint the picture of what this looks like to everybody. You would basically walk into a door, hang one left, and it's like, if anyone's ever been to like a small dentist or doctor's office, everyone knows there's just like that one 40-foot long hallway with offices that shoot out on both sides, and like that's the extent of the office. So very small office. There was maybe 5 individual offices like that are just all attached to that hallway. And we call it the Old Boys Club because there were 3 guys that were basically, I'll call them acquaintances, probably not friends. They were all in their 60s or 70s, and they just split expenses for the down to like the printer costs. Like people were writing like $27 checks for how many like sheets of paper they use out of the printer. And each of these 3 dudes had their own like clients that they serviced, and like they just shared that office space together. So everyone had their own like little practice. And the largest of the 3, he actually, I'll say, showed up to work every day. So he was the most successful out of the 3 guys, because the other 2, sometimes you wouldn't see him for like literally like 2 months, had no work ethic at all. So the third, who I worked for, actually showed up to work every day and was able to connect with people. So he built a book of clients throughout 30 years. And so he needed to hire a couple guys, and he was intelligent enough to know that for him to retire and get paid for his business, and I won't even use the word business, for his clients, he would need to have guys that, the clients knew to make it a smooth handover. So I was getting paid $32,000 as a licensed financial professional. After struggling for a year and a half, and like after I understood how the money was made, even though I wasn't getting paid really any of the money, I understood the ways to generate money, and that wasn't being prioritized at all. Everyone was pretty much coming in, sitting on their hands, and whatever came to them just sort of came to them. It wasn't coming to me. It was coming to, I'll call it the old boy of the bunch. And I really thought this is definitely a scalable business model with what is already here. We can definitely blow this up and take it to the next level, which is when I started laying out my own plan of how I was going to do that. So even though I wasn't running the business, wasn't in charge of the practice, because there was no LLC formed here. It was just a sole proprietorship. I started laying out my own plan in like spring of 2019 of how I thought I could execute on this whenever I got the opportunity to buy the clients and buy the assets. So that's another, I would say, tip for people is just because the time isn't right now and you don't have the opportunity today, if you're in a situation where you communicate your thoughts and you're showing the work ethic and that's just not being reciprocated and you're not given the opportunity yet, that doesn't mean you're not going to get the opportunity. So don't give up on yourself or the situation if it's going to be viable long term and you think
and not to interrupt, but that goes back to identifying opportunity on the front end. Like
correct.
What you did was you saw an opportunity on the front end, and you're like, it may take a little bit of time.
Right. You got to sacrifice.
I may have to eat shit for a couple of years, which many times that's usually what happens. Like you're going to have to come in and eat shit for a couple of years.
There's no perfect situation.
Yeah, you're not going to come in and then
you had as close to a perfect situation as possible.
I was one of the most, and I tell this to everyone, I was extremely lucky. Now, that did not mean I wasn't putting in 16.
Right, yeah.
I was putting in 16-hour days.
Which is why
why
you got taken care of.
Exactly.
Because you were in the right
place, right time.
Right. If I probably wouldn't
ethic.
have ate shit for a couple of years, even though I was willing to output anything, I probably wouldn't have known to, reward and encourage you, to keep doing what you were doing, because I knew how bad it sucked. And if you with the output you had, if we wouldn't have taken care of you, you probably wouldn't have hung around with as hard as you were working.
Yeah.
So I think it's important too. A lot of people think that I ate shit, so that means my people need to eat shit too, and know what it's like to go through that. Pay, you'll hear a lot of people say oh, you need to pay your dues. That's bullshit.
No.
There's a way to quote unquote pay your dues, but treat your people well and encourage them to continue to work hard at the same time. So it's important to, just because you're in an organization and you hear people say well, that's how it's always been. You're always capable of turning a new page and turning the leaf and, changing the environment that you're in 100%. To make sure that other people don't feel that way. But anyway, so to circle back, I knew that, there was a lot of ways that I could, basically be an entrepreneur, take this existing opportunity and make it better. And even though I couldn't control change at that point, I didn't stop working and basically laid out my master plan on how I was going to execute. Got the opportunity 9 months later, and January 1st of 2020, I literally had everything already set out and just started executing at a high level and never looked back. So just don't be afraid to take a back seat as an entrepreneur also. If you think you have that $1 million idea and people aren't listening to you, that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. That means that you're just not in the right situation yet. And that situation, you're probably going to get the opportunity sometime. I always say that, there's no such thing as, a lot of people say there's no such thing as luck. I think that the harder you work, the luckier you get. So I think that eventually it'll pay off and you will get lucky because you've put in the work to get the right situation and opportunity. But yeah, so that was basically the same way as Nick. I was an entrepreneur in a little different circumstance where I wasn't able to basically put in the efforts to make the organization better because I was putting in the work but just wasn't given the authority to execute. But that doesn't mean I stopped, that I continued working. Basically, I was almost working for myself and just not getting paid for it because I was putting in long hours of putting together my plan on how to turn it into a real business and execute. It was just that, it was sort of on the sideline and I wasn't able to, put that into place until I became the entrepreneur whenever I purchased the business. So that's another way that people can do it too. If you know the opportunity is not now, that doesn't mean you have to wait. You can do everything within your power and be ready for that moment to boom, pull the trigger and execute, and then just start growing it into a real business when you're in the entrepreneur seat. So for me, that's how I did it, and I saw very quickly as soon as I realized how money was made in the organization, like I realized that it was scalable. So definitely, no matter what your job is at whatever company you're at, figure out how the money is made. And then study, ways to improve it because there's nothing more valuable to an organization than someone that can come in and say, like, I know exactly how we make money and I've found A, B, and C, 3 different ways to either repeat and do this at a higher level or new ways to increase revenue because obviously that's what drives sales. That's what drives the company's growth. Revenue is everything. So if you want to become a valuable asset at any organization, figure out how the money's made. And that's something that Nick wanted to just get as much information as quickly as possible. And you wanted to know everything.
Definitely. Yeah, because where I saw that I could add value is at the time, it was truthfully a bandwidth issue. We were in a really fortunate position to where we had a lot of clients. There was a lot of people coming in the door because at the forefront of our business is the service aspect. And I'll say this confidently, we give better service than anyone else. I don't care really what you're in. We give the best service because we've built a team that believes in us, believes in the culture, and believes in doing everything on the forefront for the client. So the business coming in the door wasn't the issue. It was how do I capitalize on maybe missed opportunity that's coming in the door? How do I take work off of, at the time, the two partners, yourself and Justin's plate, so that you guys can continue to go out and further the business, get bigger clients, get more people, drive the funnels more. So that was the first thing that I identified as okay, I can add value if I learn exactly how the revenue is made, exactly how to capitalize every single aspect of each one of our clients and take that to the highest level. So that's pretty much what I spent the majority of my time on and it was long, long nights and going through line by line every single client that they had, looking at their situation, looking at different ways that we could make their situation better. And that's what I really focused on. And I think, that kind of showed you hey, he's adding value. He's taking work off my plate, but more importantly, he's allowing me to do higher level things. He's allowing the business to grow. Because I think that's another, and I kind of want to pivot to this topic, is looking at a way that a business has run. Let's say it was like a family run business or an old boys club that we talk about. A lot of times people are set in their ways. And a lot of times that set in their ways goes back to that ego perspective where, well, this is how I've done it for 30 years and it's worked. Well, how did you, when you came in, and I know it was kind of tough when the guy was there, but how were you able to kind of reframe the mindset of the business of, this is how these guys have done it for 30 to 40 years, reframing the mindset into creating a culture of this is how we're going to do it going forward? Yeah,
so I think the number one thing is always looking for ways to improve things. And I think that I get a lot of that mindset that I always talk about with our team from the military. On that side of my background, I'm an infantry officer, and something that's sort of ingrained into our mind is your fighting position is never done. You can always improve your position, it's never perfect. And that honestly was sort of a life-changing mindset for me to adapt, and that was fall of 2018. So like I started in the business before I went away for, that training, and honestly when I came back, it was like I could sort of like I thought about things a little differently. And then when I came back, that's when I really looked at everything of, okay, instead of just going with the status quo, what ways can we improve things? And I think that it's important to, no matter what position you're in, if you're like, manager, your boss, whoever, your supervisor says, hey, like this is how it is, don't just accept that for what it is. You don't want to blanketly say, well, that's stupid or something like that. If you in your mind think, well, is it really the only way to do that? Go and do your own homework and research and try to find 3 or 4 different ways to do things that could possibly be better. And then if you want to be a high level person, you're going to come back and say, hey, I've done some analysis. Here's 3 or 4 ways that we could improve this and do this differently. And then if the person is like, well, this is how we've always done it. And if you get shot down like that, then you're probably not in a good situation. Yeah. And that's when you need to make an evaluation of, is there a runway here where I have the ability to grow and do things that, differently, or do I need to go find a better culture? So that's a perfect segue into I guess of me and Nick have both met and known a lot of people that when they are the entrepreneur, which is the person that's, they've taken the risk, they've generally started things since infancy, and have, set everything in place that exists today. They've been a part of that. So that's their baby. They think that it's the best way to do something. Mm-hmm. And people like that have been there the whole way, a lot of people build an ego. Most entrepreneurs have went from, no money to being pretty wealthy. Or if they haven't gotten to that scale yet, I would say of being wealthy, they're at least the most successful person they've known in their family or in their friend group. So when that's the case, egos, they obviously naturally develop because in their world, they're the smartest person that people say they know. Mm-hmm. They're the most successful person that, their groups think that they know. So that ego naturally builds, and they think that their way is the only way. And I've experienced that, firsthand for who I came up into the business underneath. And it is, I want to say, almost impossible. It's very daunting to try to tear down that wall of people that have that ego. And when you're the entrepreneur, if you ever recognize that ego is becoming a problem, you need to check yourself quick, because that could be a huge issue. As soon as you get that ego and think your way is the only way, that's when you become stagnant. That's when there becomes an issue with your culture, because whether people are telling you that like it's a problem or not, it is a problem. And it's going to just damage the overall organization and culture. So we always say we never want to surround ourselves with yes men. Any high performance individual wants to surround themselves with people that are even smarter than they are, that are going to give them different views, different ways of doing things, different options, which is going to lead to different ideas, which is going to lead to more growth. So I guess I'd like an honest assessment. How do you think it was coming in with me? I know how it was coming in, working underneath someone that was the entrepreneur that had a huge ego problem. Give me your honest assessment of how you think it was in our organization.
Definitely. So literally the phrase that I would use to describe it is confident leaders breed confident people. Yeah. Egotistic leaders tear the organization down, create friction within the group. So that's what I saw was confident leader, big difference between confident leader, egotistic leader. Yeah. Where confident leader respects the ideas of his people. We'll go ahead and we say that all the time. If one of our people comes to us with an idea that they're like, hey, we really think that this could, from a marketing effort, from an operational effort, from an administrative effort, we really think that this could make our organization better. We will always try it. Literally. We'll try and 90% of the time it doesn't work. But like the 10% of the time that it has worked, it's made us so much better. So that was the biggest thing, was the confidence in the leadership, to where you're looking as an employee, hey, my leader's confident. I should be confident in myself. I should be confident in my thoughts and opinions. It's not, well, my leader has this huge ego. I'm scared to even bring any ideas to him or her because I know it's just going to get shot down because we're never going to change. And that, like, it goes back to your point. You have an egotistic leader like that, 99% of the time, I would say it's the business is stagnant. The
Yes.
business is not growing. The business is not continuing to optimize, continuing to get better, because in this world that we've seen, even in this short time that we've been partners over the 2 years, so much has changed.
Just think about how many times we've pivoted.
Things change.
Probably 7 times.
Literally weekly, things are changing.
Yeah.
So if you're not, especially nowadays with the technology advancements and all the new changes in marketing and how business can be run more efficiently, if you're not changing with the times, you're behind.
Yeah.
And you're never going to grow. And I think that stems from a lot of these people who have the egos of, well, this is the only way that it can be done, and they don't give power to their people and allow people to have confident thoughts and have input of what they're seeing on the ground floor of the organization. That's what really inhibits organizations from like the upward trajectory. So when I came in, I saw that we had at least monthly meetings with the entire team where it was kind of just like a brain dump session where people are spitting their ideas out. Leaders are talking about what they're looking for in the people. People are talking about what they're looking for in leaders. I think that open flow of communication is really, really big.
I think it's important as a leader with everybody that directly reports to you. You need to have a conversation where you lay out your expectations to them, and then it's your responsibility as a leader to say, what are your expectations of me? And if you don't have that conversation and you're listening to this right now, go do it today.
Yeah.
And your people are gonna go home and be like, I had the best conversation today with my manager or whoever, because they finally said, hey, what's the expectations you have of me? And it's going to make their day, and then they're going to feel empowered, which it sounds like you felt empowered pretty quickly once you came into the organization that you could affect change. And I remember you coming back, bringing ideas to me all the time. And like, again, that was something that led me to make the decision that I want to be a business partner with this guy, because he's going to give me, ideas. He's going to give feedback. And you weren't somebody that agreed with everything I ever said. You'd be like, well, let's think through this, or I don't know about that, or how would we do that, which that's valuable to people. So, and I want to circle back too with being a confident leader and not a leader with an ego problem, because I think that a lot of people need to figure out how to do this. So, and there's a way that I explained it to Nick, and then, I saw you sort of adapt this too. It's important as an entrepreneur to be an optimist. If you're a pessimistic entrepreneur, you're not going to go far.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people say, like, you don't manifest things. I'm a pure believer that you manifest your future. I can tell you 100% the deal that we're closing on right now, we literally have manifested from the ground up. As soon as we saw the opportunity, when we were competing with 50 other firms, me and Nick were like, we have to get this deal. And we just basically manifested it, believed that we were getting this deal, didn't accept no for an answer, and just made it happen. So I'll say manifestation is real. To be able to manifest something, you need to be an optimist. And if you are an optimist, you also need to be confident, because just because you believe something's going to happen, if you're not confident about it, no one's going to believe you. And we already talked about earlier, it's really hard to do stuff alone. Generally, you need a team of good people around you to make stuff happen. So we talked about you need to be an optimist. You need to, be confident, because you need people to be able to believe in your positivity, your vision, your manifestation of something. And a lot of people will say, well, how do I know that, it's the right thing? Are we going to get in trouble? Is it going to let people down? And from really early on, I told Nick, as long as you're doing something that is moral, ethical, and something that you can basically go to sleep every night knowing that, it's going to better off whoever or whatever you're trying to affect change with, then you never have to look back or wonder, was it a right decision? Because at the end of the day, if you didn't do something illegal, didn't do something unethical, and didn't do something immoral, you're definitely not going to get in trouble. You're not going to let anybody down. The only possible negative outcome is it might not have been the best business decision, which failure drives, learning, which drives better organization. So at the end of the day, it would have been a learning point. So everything we do, we make sure it's moral, it's ethical, and it's legal. And as long as you check those 3 boxes, I personally am extremely confident, because I know the worst outcome at that point then is going to be we might fail on whatever that objective was, but then we use that failure to learn and be better next time, which we've failed on multiple things we've done together. And I was just going to say, we've done that. So we do, it happens all the time, to where if you stay in the exact same place and you're scared to make any decision, to where, oh, well, this might be wrong, or this may not be the best outcome, then you will always stay in the same place. But the other individual who's in the exact same situation, if they
5 times they make a decision, and the first 4 times the decision turns out to be a failure, but that 5th time it turns out to be right, they're above the person who never, they just stepped a level ahead of the person who never made a decision. So it is always better in every case that we've seen to at least take action, whether it be, hey, we may not have thought this the whole way through, or hey, this may not be the most optimal way of doing it, but if you take action, and even if it doesn't work, then boom, you're able to analyze the situation, make the pivot, do something that does work. And we've done it with the acquisition phase that we're in, where we're really trying to go out and acquire all these businesses that we are. And we learned from the beginning what we need to do, what we don't need to do, trigger points of people, things that people value in our industry. We've learned that, and we've kind of tailored our way of doing things around that. And it's basically got us one of the biggest deals in the industry over the last 3 years.
And to be successful in all those things, you have to be a confident leader. And we went through really the difference between, I won't even say being a leader with an ego. If you have an ego issue, I would say you're probably not a leader. You're more of just a manager at that point. There's a big difference between being a manager and being a leader. Just because you have, title doesn't mean that, people believe in you like they believe in a leader. So, or, respect you. So big difference there. But definitely being a confident leader, checking your ego at the door, and being able to take feedback and criticism and ideas from all of your subordinate leaders and subordinate personnel is one of the biggest attributes of a success. The difference between a successful entrepreneur and an entrepreneur that might not succeed and probably will fail is huge. So right behind, we obviously talked in our first episode about how important discipline is and how it's probably the most important attribute of a successful entrepreneur. I would say, confidence and checking your ego at the door is probably, in my opinion, the second most important attribute of a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, because, and I will say, this goes back to the manager leader point. Yeah. If you have to go around and remind your people that you're their boss, you are not a leader.
You're lost. You're done.
You're not a leader.
Honestly, at that point, you're probably better off like closing the doors and starting fresh because you've already lost.
Because we don't walk around with name tags on that say partner, or we don't walk around with name tags on that say our title. Our people follow us because they're confident in us because we're confident in them. Right. It's a two-way street. And if you have to, the only way that you can get your people to do something is remind them that you have a higher title than them, or remind them that maybe you're the one that's signing their paychecks, then you're not a leader. You're a manager, and your business will go nowhere, because if your people don't organically believe in your vision, the mission, in the culture, and what you're trying to do, then you're stuck. You're not going to go anywhere. Because, and it goes back to the first point, you cannot build a successful organization by yourself.
No. So, yeah, I think we gave a lot of good advice today, and hopefully people listening to this, grab one of your people and sit down and have a conversation and just talk to them about hey, give me your honest feedback of, what do you see in me? What do you see in the culture that we have here? And maybe, you might have some room for improvement, or hopefully it's some affirmations that, hey, we're doing the right thing here. But definitely leave your ego at the door the second you decide to open your own doors. And especially when you start building out a team, make sure that you are taking those ideas. No one knows everything. I tell everybody that we hire, we want their ideas. We want their views. We want all kinds of different views, because no one knows everything. If you look at any of the most successful entrepreneurs, they try to hire the smartest people there are, to surround themselves with people that are going to give them valuable advice, valuable feedback. And that's just one of the most important things of starting your own business and running an effective organization. You have anything to add, Nick?
No. Nothing much to add. I think we covered a lot of good stuff, and we have a lot of good stuff coming our audience's way with a lot of different stuff about business and team and culture, what we're kind of doing on a day-to-day basis, what we're working towards. So super excited to continue to follow our journey and document our journey as we go. And comment, share.
For sure.
And we will be back soon.
Sounds good. See you guys later.